Yay! Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Rolla Public Library here on Pine and Ninth in Rolla, Missouri, in the big brick building that used to be the post office. And for this Halloween season, we have with us author, priestess, teacher, Jamie Della. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. This is so fun.
And where are you at right now?
Right now, I'm in my family home kitchen that I grew up here. We moved here when I was 10, and my mom still lives here. So I came down to visit because I flew out to see my daughter in Michigan, and this is since I live on a mountain, there's no airport nearby, so I have to travel. I have to travel just to travel.
So you've been across the country this past few days then?
Yes. I just got back from Michigan last night and woke up in Orange County. I mean, it is so hot here. I can't believe it.
Really? In Orange County? Wow.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's like, I think it's 80 or something right now.
We have very Halloween weather here in the Ozarks. It's misty, a little foggy. It's in the 50s, cloudy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, ooh.
Yeah, ours is in Mammoth, where I normally live in the mountains at 7,000 feet elevation. We got snow.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's right.
We have a lot of snow.
Winter started early in the high altitudes here.
Yeah, they're going to open up the ski resort and everything.
Wow. Well, I'd like to introduce you a little further to our audience. And I want to remind everyone that the recording will be available to watch later. And you're welcome to ask questions, whether you're in Twitter or Facebook or YouTube this evening. And we do talk to authors and other people of interest throughout the year with Derek Zaborin, my coworker and fellow librarian, interviewing people. And you can always find out what's coming up at our website, rollapubliclibrary.org. Okay, so Jamie is the author of 9 books, including the Book of Spells, The Magic of Witchcraft, which we will be discussing today. She has studied magic and spirituality from around the world for more than 20 years. She is a healer, workshop and retreat leader, and teacher. Jamie writes Herbal Journeys for Witches in Pagan Magazine and has been published in Sage Woman. I love Sage Woman, Rebel Society, Manifestation, among others. When not writing, Jamie is either in creative meditation at her potter's wheel, backpacking the Eastern Sierra, or creating hearth magic at her guest house in the aspen trees. So it's so good to have you with us today to discuss magical lifestyles and your book.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited. I have my own copy here too.
Yay! And I wanted people to know this will be available to check out in about a week or two, and we are starting the hold list, the wait list.
Yes, and also there will be a giveaway. That's a special that I spoke with my publisher, and we will have a giveaway maybe at the end of this or however we want to roll that. But I want to also be able to donate a copy to somebody in your community who might be interested, or whomever is your community online,
That's great. Yeah. And definitely after the broadcast, we can work out the details and find out how we can give away one of those books. And I have to say, it is gorgeous. And I wanted to show the people the inside too. So this isn't a paperback. These are really bound well, so they'll last. And I love all the details, like.
Ooh. Yeah, that's Sarah. That's Sarah Weissman. She also there's some blue colors and there's some orange pages because I don't design it. The author doesn't design it. The author sometimes can make some comments on the cover, like I made some comments on the initial cover design. And I didn't feel like it really spoke to, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that phone is
Ah!
ringing. I'm at my mom's house and somebody is calling over the phone. I'm so sorry. I don't know. I will hang up the phone after this. Well, I can't. I have to stay here. So, anyways,
He's
oh
like,
my God.
hello, spirit's calling.
I know, seriously. My mom is calling from France. Anyhow. So, okay. So anyway, so I really felt like this book was about healing with a lifestyle that lives in accordance with the season, and how when we really kind of morph our lives with the seasons, and we really look to the universe as speaking to us at all times, that we can shine our light brighter when we're feeling that connectivity. And so that's why the cover has these little sparkles. And it's also because when I first wrote this book, I was really writing it to heal a lot of the pain and the trauma that I had experienced when I was younger. And so there was a lot of shining through our brokenness, you know, and there's a quote from Mr. Cohen, and it is, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
I love that.
And I might be misquoting it because I'm just throwing it up out of nowhere right now, but I think I got it, and it's in the book. And it just really, that was kind of for me, the theme of the book is really reminding people that they are magic. They are the magic they've been waiting for. And that magical life is really about living in connection and listening to a language with the natural and the supernatural worlds.
Right, to bring that spark back into life. I know we get so wrapped up in our day-to-day happenings, and then, like, especially over the past couple of years when we've been apart from people and stuck inside more, we need that. We need something to help liven us up and bring joy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is that connectivity, whether it's with people, like we recognize how important it is for us to really connect to the people in our lives, and how much we missed that, how much we missed having hugs, you
I've been
know.
hugging a lot of trees.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I was going to say. There's a lot of tree hugging then. There's a lot of going outside and making that connection with nature rather than always waiting for somebody else.
Absolutely. And now we're in that time where nature is getting ready for its long sleep, and we have all these beautiful colors to see, and I love watching the seasons. And right now it's Halloween in America, and that's usually associated with horror movies, candy, costumes. You know, there's a lot of spooky things coming to the theater. But this holiday also has its roots and traditions that honor departed family members and ancestors, such as Samhain from the Celtic part of the world, and then the Day of the Dead, Dia de Muertos, out of Mexico. And I know you have Hispanic ancestors, right?
We say Latina, but in Latinx,
Oh,
but yes,
thank you.
no worries. It's only because I was joking actually today. I knew you were going to ask about that, and it was funny because I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, what do I do that's so different than other people, or so, you know, Hispanic or Latina or Mexican, because I'm Mexican. I'm not Latina. Hispanic is a way. It was actually a term that was created by Reagan or Nixon, now I'm forgetting which one, for a political reason, to like put us in a category versus Latinos or Latinx. And so this is, so I would, like, George Lopez had this joke. He would say, where's the land of Hispania? There's no land of Hispania, you know? And so it was, and I meant to like let you know that before we talked, but anyways, I was thinking, what do I do that's different? And to me, it's like saying, when people go, you want to go to Mexican food? I'm like, you want to go eat? Like, that's good. That's my food. That's like, I don't call it anything. I don't even know how to like twist myself away from my Mexicanness to call it, you know, to say that's what I do. That's Mexican, right? This is what I was thinking today. However, I am in a town now that has a Michael's and good grocery stores, and I can go shopping for my new grandbaby and all these things that we don't have. The closest stores I live in a town of 800 people. And so the closest store that I have for any kind of physical shopping or anything like that is about 2.5 hours away. So it's really rural. So there's just not a lot of that going on. So that's when I come here, I go get that picture frame that I needed, and I don't look around. I just go to Michael's for that, but I walk into these places, and then I had about an hour before our meeting or our talk here today. And I thought, well, what will I do? What do I want to do? Because, goodness knows I don't do anything. I'm like, oh, I'll go visit my grandparents in their cemetery. So like, it was so automatic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, let's see. I've gone to the Verizon store. I went to Michael's and Kohl's. Now I'm going to the cemetery. Like, it was all part of life. Do you know what I mean? It was just woven in. And then I went to the Albertsons nearby, and I got 3 bundles of marigolds for all my relatives to put at all their graves, and some Advent candles, and a bag of Habit chips, and a beer. I brought that to the cemetery. And then I've always done this because it's my grandfather is buried here, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and my great-grandfather that I know of. For the last 30 years, whenever I go visit their cemetery, I go looking for them. I go to try to figure out if I can find out where they are. And which is crazy. It's a huge cemetery. But I always try to remember their view and like kind of where they're positioned, and just walk around in that peaceful way that cemeteries bring for me, because Samhain, as you mentioned, is Halloween time. It's also the witch's new year. And that's because we're giving up what no longer serves us to go into the womb and the quiet of winter so that we can be born again. And so this is really our rebirth as well. So I'm walking around barefoot. Of course, you have to walk around barefoot in a cemetery. And I've got my marigolds, and I've got my chips, and I've got all this stuff. And I found my great-grandfather's grave, my tata. And I have never found his grave before.
Oh, wow.
And I swear he called me over, and I even had to send a picture of the grave to my mom to say, is this Tata? Because I wasn't sure. But the dates looked about right. And then, of course, the name was right. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I sat there, and I really wasn't sure if it was him. The whole time I was talking to him, I'm like, but if it's not you, I know you're here somewhere. But in any case, so that's part of my Mexicanness. So it's to eat there. It's called a dumb supper, and it's where you eat some food and you have some drinks. So I poured the beer on the grave for him. I put some chips, and we had the flowers, and I have what I make. It's called cemetery dust. So there is it's basically like an herbal bundle. And this is something that instead of spreading their ashes, you can spread this, wait, find the camera. There we go. So I can find this here, right here. But and I sprinkle that on his grave, and I sit with him and I ask him questions. And because so much of magic lifestyle is listening. We think a lot of it as doing, as, casting our spells or manifesting our desires or doing ceremony or any of these things. But really, it's about listening. That's really the most important aspect, is that there's a reciprocity. I don't want to say it's the most important. I would almost say it like how the goddess really got a big push about 20 years ago in the witchcraft movement. And that was not because, and it all depends. If you're a Dianic witch, then you might say that the goddess is the most important and the only. But for myself, I like to bring equalness to the divine male and the divine female in my lifestyle practice, to feel that my actions are as important as my rest. And to have that. And so where I might be focused on my rest right now, or focused on a certain aspect, it's only because I need to bring it back into balance. And that's really what living in harmony with nature is all about. It's about finding the yin with the yang, the rest with the doing. And that's just an important part. So I just find that Dia de los Muertos, Dia de
DJ
los
Los Muertos. Thank you.
Muertos. And then the T's are always very soft. That's like tos. You know, it's not like tos. It's not Dia de los Muertos. You know, it's tos. It's
No.
softer. But being in the cemetery today, it was a beautiful way of just remembering that this is another time to rebirth. So I sat with my great grandfather and I told him what I was going to be doing today, and how I thanked him, and how I knew the stories about he was called El Tigre because he had these eyes and he was flirting with all the ladies. And I think one of the most interesting things is that I wasn't sure if it was him, and I had heard some stories that he was a cad, you know, like he was cheating on my great grandmother all the time, you know, this kind of a thing. And because he was so good looking, he could, you know, and he was kind of a playboy. He had girlfriends, you know, they all worked at the packing houses out here in the citrus, orange groves. This is Orange County. So they all worked out there, and he was a bit of a cad. But then when I text the picture to my mom, is this really him? And she's in France on this trip. I'm like, is this great grandma?
Goodness.
And she says, yes, that's him. She said, how did she put it? She said, have a sweet rest. Have a lovely rest, my sweet prince. Or something. Like, it was so amazing to me. Yes, she said, good night, sweet prince, to him, because that's really how she saw him. And even though there are these stories, you have this opportunity to reinvent your family's stories and to say, yeah, he's a sweet prince. Good night, sweet prince. And it's a rest. And then maybe he'll be reborn somewhere else, you know?
One thing I like to do at this time of year is I also do the dumb supper, where you prepare food for loved ones who have passed on, you know, your ancestors. And so this time of year, I always make cornbread because I spent a lot of time with my grandparents out in the forest of the Ozarks. They lived in a pine forest in the mountains, and they would always make cornbread and beans, that kind of thing. So I've already made my beans. I'll get some out of the freezer and reheat them on Sunday, which is Samhain, Halloween, and make cornbread for them, and some for them to honor their memory, and then some for me. And yeah, it's that time to sit and listen and be with your feelings and your memories, and see if you can feel that presence of loved ones who've gone.
That was the neatest thing, when I wasn't sure if it was him, but I was sitting at his grave anywheres, you know. And usually when we do these things, you feel the magic welling up, because you there's a lot that you do in intention and setting a ceremony and everything. So there's no mistaken. You're absolutely in that in between world, right? And in that liminal space where our magic can happen, and we're in between ideas and manifestation. That's kind of that in between space for me. And I wasn't sure if it was there, and I drove away. I'm like, did I do it? And then I got the text from my mom as I was leaving, like, yes, that was him. And I was like, I felt it, but I felt him so pull me, and I felt him pull me in this way of,
and that's how you found the grave.
I had a broom of cinnamon, like the cinnamon brooms from Trader Joe's.
Mm-hmm.
And I brushed his grave, and asking for his protection, his ancestral protection. And sometimes that's just maybe, you know, from sad thoughts. It doesn't always have to be from a burglar coming in. You know what I mean? That protection can be about, like you said, turning your that emptiness maybe into a fullness, because you feel their presence. You know, and they can do so much more for us than you even realize. And the coolest thing is, I was going through Albertsons, and I had these flowers and the candles, and the checker was like, what are you doing? I said, what do you think I'm doing? Because she was a Latina woman, and I was like, what do you think I'm doing? Because marigolds is our flower.
Mm-hmm.
We don't just put any flowers, we put the marigolds. And the marigolds are the flowers that really, those are the ones we leave the petals from the cemetery to the house, as they did in Coco, in the Disney film Coco. And she said, oh, She goes, oh, I put it up. She goes, oh, you're doing an altar. And I wanted to say, it's called an ofrenda. You know this. But I was like, well, let her be, Jamie. So that's the Spanish word, is an ofrenda. And so like an offering, it's your altar is your offering of remembrance. And so she said, oh, I make an altar for my dad every year. And we're in the checkout and we're doing this and there's everybody around us, right? And then because the cemetery was like a mile away. And then she goes, yeah, earlier I hadn't done it yet. My 4-year-old son says, we got to make our altar for grandpa. And then he said he remembered that they had to put the marigolds and they had to he said he goes, they remember that from the movie and that the marigolds didn't quite reach their house or something. And he goes, that's okay, Mom. It's okay. He'll find us, and it's really this sweet way, because my mom's mom died the month before I was born. So I've always had this really connection with the spirit world. Like it's never even been a question whether or not it's a thing or not, whether or not, is there a spirit world? Do we have, no, it was, and it's like, is there gravity? It was that obvious to me that we can speak with our beloved, that there was just this veil. And like you said, now is that time that we remember them. So I like to think of Halloween or Samhain as like the twilight of the year. So like the twilight time when everything's sort of really fuzzy and shadows seem to be different. And it seems like there's almost this portal as the worlds of night and day kind of blend. That's what Halloween is to me.
And the sun even shines such a way on the horizon that it hits the atmosphere, makes it very orange and gives it kind of that otherworldly glow.
Yeah. That's so funny you would say that. I was thinking about that last night as we were coming into flying home into LA, the orange that was coming through the light of orange. I just looked at that orange and it was so brilliant and so magical that I just remember thanking the universe for making orange last night.
That we're so lucky to be on a planet with so many colors. And I think that's one thing I love about the magical and witch type lifestyle is seeing those beautiful moments, year round. I realize we've had some comments in the chat. So
okay.
Yes, that first off, a couple people said they really love the book design. Thank you, everybody. And this is a very good question from Sydney. Do you prefer the term brujas instead of witch?
Thank you very much for asking that. I tend to use the word witch because underneath everything, I am a writer and I am a wordsmith. And the word witch comes from the word wicca, W-I-C-C-E, the Anglo-Saxon word for the word wise, or the word to bend or shape the unseen forces. Now, I haven't done the etymology for the word bruja, but it tends to have more of a negative connotation. So I'm more inclined to use the word curandera, which means like the healer, like cure, cura. So you're someone who heals. And so that, in terms of my Latino, Hispanic, Mexican culture, I'm more inclined to use curandera versus bruja, unless I'm in that mood, And if I'm in like, listen, I'm a bruja, you don't want to mess with me, don't use the word bruja.
Right, just like this.
Yes, it's walk the light, know the dark. Like I'm all about the pink light and white bubbles, but if you come after any of my babies or any of my friends or any of my family, you'll see the bruja.
I'm trying to see if there was Sydney says that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think we had a little bit of a spam. So which is about healing peace, but which made me think it's a spam, but for which made me think it was spam for healing a medical condition, which made me think of herbs and ointments.
Oh, okay.
And could you tell us what was in the graveyard dust?
Okay, so yeah, let me tell you about my cemetery dust.
Yes.
So, so yeah, I actually forgot to sprinkle this because I was so not sure if it was him or not. So I gotta go now. I gotta go back, which is fine because I never found my great grandmother or my grandparents. So I'll be going back. But what happened? So this originated when I first learned about kind of putting together herbal pouches, and I've augmented this ritual, but I want to give credit to where I first watched this ceremony happen, and it was at a tobacco blessing ceremony that was an Algonquin tradition, but was taught the ceremony was held in the Los Angeles Mountains with the Quiche Nation, also known as the Tongva people. So and if you go also their name was also changed by the Spanish, who called them the Gabrielenos, because that was the San Gabriel mission of Los Angeles. So they named the native people the Gabrielenos, but they already had their own name. No, I'm not. So anyway, so we were at this ceremony in Los Angeles, and it's all this native people at the top of this meadow, this mountain in the Los Angeles mountains. And we were all told to bring dried herbs from our homes. And we were told that you could empty your spice rack if you wanted to bring some old herbs that you're like, this basil is 3 years old or 4, whatever it is, in your little McCormick's, holder, or perhaps you have some chamomile tea bags or whatever it is, and you could even rip open those tea bags. It didn't have to be anything that you were growing. It didn't have to be anything that you had purchased. It didn't have to be any special kind of herb, as long as it was special to you. As long as you had a relationship with that herb and it was somehow in your cupboards, and so you, or your garden, so you would everyone brought this to the ceremony. They brought some some herbs of their own, and then they had tobacco that they that the native people, that my friend Jimmy, who's the elder who put this together, and so they had a huge bowl, and everybody was invited. There was singing over the bowl and chanting, and everyone came up and dropped their herbs in, and then the people sang over it and drummed, and the drum was as big as a VW bus. It was this huge drum. There was like 10 people beating on it while the singing was going on, while we were dumping our herbs, while the stirring of the pot was going. And then we all came back to that bowl and received a pouch. And that was our blessing pouch. That was our tobacco blessing. And that was for when we were wildcrafting. We could sprinkle this mixture as our offering, as our blessing. As some people might pour water, some people might give a strand of their hair. This was something that was specific for wildcrafting. So I just added to it by adding marigold, which is the Dia de los Muertos flower, and roses, because I was first told by my grandmother. I had the grandmother who had crossed over and was my angel, my spirit guide for a very long time. And then I had another grandmother who was a tarot reader, and she was a psychic tarot reader. So she told me that when you smell roses, that is the presence of a loved one who has passed on. So I added the roses. I added to the ceremony. So this pouch I had, and the next time I did it is when my friend Melinda crossed over, and she died, and we weren't going to get any of her ashes. So we went into her cupboards though, and we took out all her herbs. She was an herbalist. Dumped all of her herbs into a big bowl. Did the same thing. Invited everybody back to the ceremony to bring their herbs. Sang around it. Drummed. Repeated the ceremony, and then now it's been 6 years of her passing, and I still have a little bit left. And now for the first time I just added to it, and I added the marigolds, and I added the roses, and I added some rosemary for remembrance. And then this is something that I can go and sprinkle on my loved ones' graves as a way of remembering them. So that's why I call it the cemetery dust.
So it's an offering. Now I wanted to ask about wildcrafting.
Okay.
Help our viewers and audience members wildcrafting, is that when you go out and you're gathering items? Like
It's when you go out and you gather herbs. You're mostly it's typically herbs or things that you're going to be using in your medicinal or magical practice. So it might be if you were going to gather white sage, if that was part of your ceremonies. If you knew where there was a patch of dogwood, and you took the rose hips from that and you made a tea. If you went out and found the wild nettles or the wild mustards or different things like that, because I mean that's what we have here. I'm not sure what you
yeah,
have.
we have dogwood and
Yeah.
cedar. Cedar is
Yeah.
often used for smoke cleansing in
Right.
our
So if you
area.
were going to go to just a forest
Mm-hmm.
and you were going to pick some cedar for your magical ceremonies, you could take this herbal pouch, this herbal blend, and sprinkle it as an offering for taking. Because I truly believe in the spirit and the reciprocity that we have with our allies, whether they're crystals or herbs, or even if we're working with sacred animals or whatever it is, that there's a reciprocity, that we recognize our equanimity and our equalness with these spirits that are helping us. So it's not just we go and we harvest and thank you very much and you walk away, that there's this moment of saying thank you. Because I truly believe when we say that, when we see that spirit and we recognize and feel it, and we don't have to see it in real life form. When I say that, I mean like see it in your mind's eye, truly feel into it. When we see that, those entities, those spirit guides, as important to remember and recognize, I feel like they send more healing into the plant. I've noticed that when I consciously pick my lavender versus when I go in there and hack away at it because I have to hurry up and go make something with it, that there's a difference when I harvest with consciousness versus being unconscious or not recognizing the spirit of the plant.
That's so lovely. Honoring its gifts, the oils you might use, the scent if you burn it, or if you add it to food, and just honoring the life of that plant.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I also enjoy about the witch and magical lifestyle, is how things are seen as sacred and having value. It and That's so different than the commercialism we live in today.
It takes slowing down.
It does. And I think this is starting. I think this is one reason there is kind of a upswelling or popularity for this lifestyle, is because it encourages people to move with the seasons. As you say, like now we're contemplating kind of the end of life and our family and ancestors, and we're preparing for that time of rest in the winter, right?
Yeah.
And then things start to grow again in the spring, and when our ideas and our creativity can start blooming again as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question from Anne Ryan. I thank you everyone for your patience and your questions. She asks, "Are you working on a new book?"
Ooh, I was just told I can't talk about it.
Oh no! So I guess the answer is yes.
No, I will say I am definitely working on a new book, but I can't say anything about what's happening with it. Although very good things are happening with it, and I think I can talk a little bit about. I'm just not gonna I'm gonna talk about it. So yeah,
Aren't we lucky?
yeah, I'm talk a little bit about it.
Okay, everyone.
It won't be out for 2 more years, so that's why it's like it's a bit of time to go through the process. But yes, my next book is going to be about it. Well, at this point, it's called Box of Magic, but it might change. Whatever its name might change, but essentially okay, you're gonna have to. I'm gonna age myself with this, but it's gonna happen. I'm gonna do it. So
that's okay. We believe that wisdom, you gain more wisdom in age, and that can actually be a beautiful thing.
It is. So this is a beautiful ages thing. So for me, this book is like Tuesdays with Maury meets like Water for Chocolate. So Tuesdays with Maury was a book about a young man who went to his elder and sat at his knee and learned so many things about life and about his practice. And so that, and then, so that was me and my Wiccan high priestess who I met when I was in my early 30s. And she was my age now. She was in her 50s. And I would sit at her knee and ask her questions, because I think ask her questions about the relationship in magic, kind of how it works more. So in other words, we can memorize, okay, cinnamon means protection, marigolds mean ancestors, blue means calm, lavender means calm. Like, we can do all these things and memorize them so that we know what to go and when to get it and when to go to the cupboard. But it's a whole other thing to develop a relationship with our allies. It's a whole other thing to have been working with Basil for 10 years versus one night. It's one thing to know you're a witch at Halloween when you're 16, and it's another thing to know that when you're 27. It's a whole other thing at 35 and 72 and on. So it's like being in your body. You learn more about who you are the longer you're in your own body and with your own mind and your own thoughts and your own personality quirks and whatnot. So this next book is really about the relationship that we have with our magical allies, and it takes us on the hero's journey. And so it's a relationship. It's me coming to my mentor, because what happened was at the very beginning of the pandemic in April of 2020, my elder high priestess, her name is Connie, and Connie's daughter reached out on Facebook and said, my mom had left a huge box of her magical notes. Would you be interested in having them? And I was like, absolutely, of course, And so they showed up, and Connie had many magical children. She had a big coven, but this woman asked me, which I felt so honored. And at my doorstep came 23 pounds of magical hymns and spells and literally notes from the ESP Institute from 1973, and just all these notes about why magic works and what they used to call mental magic, and just different things of how they worded things and how to charge crystals. And I didn't know what to do with this. And then finally I found the thread. And I found a way to put this entire book together in a way that I could talk about the relationship and the reciprocity, because as a lifestyle, witchcraft has always been taught versus an oral tradition. There were no books that wrote this stuff down. We didn't go to Albertsons and someone go, oh, I make an altar for my dead granddad too. Like, that didn't happen 20 years ago.
There was
you
a
wouldn't be in
big
the middle of
stigma
Orange.
in the 90s.
Yeah, you wouldn't be in the middle of Orange County picking this stuff up because, Disney brought out Coco. So now even this young woman in her 20s knows how to teach her culture to her son. And I'm not saying that it didn't seem like she knew beforehand. That's why I say this, not because Disney is in control of that, but because, thank gosh, these traditions that have been hidden can come back out again. And when my books first came out, that's what Connie used to say is, you need strength, because you're going to go out there. And this was in a world, when my first book came out, it was right when 9/11 had happened. And so, or my second book came out when the 9/11 happened. And so here everyone was kind of circling around people who lived a certain lifestyle. And I was on the outside, and I had to keep fighting and keep talking about this. And now we can talk about it. Now we can talk about going to full moon ceremonies, or showing up at doing a tobacco blessing, or the ceremonies that we're doing now. We don't have to hide it as much. Everyone's wearing their big crystals, and this kind of
over 30 billion views on Witch Talk, on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. And so now people are really excited about it. And I just want to bring people back to that idea that it's not just about spell casting. It's not just about manifesting. It's about knowing when to cast a spell, when to sit. And I feel like the relationship between two women is the best way to teach that. So that's what this next book is going to be, but it won't be out for a couple more years. So once some of the final deals have been made and the contracts have been signed, I will be making announcements. But until then, it's kind of like, wow. But I love talking about it. So thanks
So,
for asking.
yeah, thank you for that good question, Anne. And she has another one I'm going to get to. So this is a guide to herbs, different prayers. This is like your a place for people to start. And then from there, it's important for them to start building the relationships with the items they use and other practitioners,
Mm-hmm.
as well as their own ancestors and guides.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so the next book is going to go deeper into that.
It'll
How
go
you make
deeper. Yeah. And how to
Mhm.
make and live that connection, not just memorize that purple makes you feel noble. like what does it feel like once you've worn purple for a year or two, or this kind of a thing? Like initiates at one point all wore, they had to wear white every day for the first part of their initiation. So there's a reason that we do ritual helps us have bring resonance and meaning, and really like deepens that groove of how important it is in our brain.
So let's take a moment. I want to tie this into Anne's question. As people are exploring their own heritage and looking into other traditions, her question is this: what are your thoughts on cultural appropriation and people using native or cultural practices that are not from our lineage? Not for profit, which I know is wrong, just for individual practice. This is such a huge issue for some in nature practices.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. I wrote about it actually in the Wicca Herbal in 2003. I had taken a group of women on a goddess retreat to Kondavu, Fiji, and I was going to write about kava, and that's their sacred plant there. That is their herb in
Kava?
Fiji. Kava,
Kava.
Kava. So there's kava ceremonies, and they bring them out for the tourists, and they do them for themselves. There's depends on where you go. We were staying at a place at a resort where my cousin was the manager, so she had been in close contact with the people and was living among them and living with them and whatnot. So I believe that if we are working with intention, I believe that we are all children of the universe. I think we are all children of this earth. And that for most of us, our lineage has taken us thousands and thousands and thousands of miles from where we first started.
Mm.
That if you look at, even if you get when I get the 23andMe that shows this line of where your family has lived, like at what point do you get to claim that's a good herb? Does your family have to be living there for 50,000 years, 10,000 years, 100,000 years, or are we all children of the universe, all children of this earth? And that's what I wrote about. I sat there in Kondavu, Fiji, and I bled right on the earth. I was on my menses, and I put my skirt out around me, and I sat right on the earth, and I bled into the earth as my offering to be able to speak about kava in the Wicca Herbal.
Oh, wow.
So I took that step where I felt like this is my ceremony, this is my request to use, to talk, not use, because I think that's the thing, we make a mistake, and it's really hard to stop that way of saying it. Oh, I used rosemary in this dish. Oh, I used basil on my sandwich. We wouldn't say I used a tomato, like, but we have this tendency to say how we use herbs. And I feel like we would never say that, like, I used my friend Tara. Like, we wouldn't say it like that. So I really want to change the way that we talk about that.
That's a great perspective.
So and it's hard to change. It's like I included, like trying to find new ways to say it. But I feel like that, I feel so strong about etymology because I feel like it speaks to our brain for a very long time, how that word has been used over the centuries. And it is coded into our DNA, the context of certain words. And so I feel like it's very important to be cognizant of our word when we go to work with certain plants. Like tobacco is a plant for blessing. Mm-hmm. And so when I work with tobacco, is it against the first native people who who harvested it and worked with this plant? Like, I don't believe so. I believe intention is really the strongest point. And of course, like you said, selling, I can never buy sage when it's bundled, like in the plastic. I'm just like, oh my God, you're suffocating it. I
Right.
don't want to buy from that.
I have heard from Native people, one reason they ask people of other heritages not to use white sage, they feel it's okay for us to use other sages or cedar because white sage tends to be over harvested and they're concerned about keeping it in the natural environment.
Well,
And
that's where you would wildcraft it.
oh, right. Okay.
That's where you can wildcraft it or buy it from someone who can wildcraft it. Like there's white sage that grows down the street here by the riverbed that nobody's using. You know what I mean? Like I'm not taking
Right.
it from anybody. It's a small bush and I'm taking one like bundle. You know what I mean? And that's the bundle. I come back here for my sage. That's where I get it. It's like the bush is the size of, I mean, there's a couple different bushes that are like the size of a dining room table, like maybe 3 of them, and I take one bundle.
Mhm.
Because I also believe that plants want to be worked with. They want their medicine, like ideas want to be made manifest through us. Elizabeth Gilbert talks about that in the book Big Magic. She talks about this idea or this belief that ideas want to be manifest and we are the human partners for those ideas. So I believe that that to bring more peace on earth would be to have that connectivity with our plants. And if we're literally taking, I don't know, like 1/1000th of a plant to honor its spirit, I don't think that's disrespectful.
Right. There's a difference between wildcrafting and then buying mass produced sage just like at like a corner.
Right. Or even the gals that are doing it
Right.
on Etsy and adding roses and whatnot to that. Like, I'm curious, are you collecting that sage in your own backyard? Or are you buying that in bulk and then adding roses?
Right.
You know, so for me, the person who makes that magical product that I'm going to be used, I want to make sure that it's done in a way that I find sacred, that you sang over it. I was taught that when I bundle my sage, I have to do it in a certain way. I was taught by a Lakota pipe carrier how to bundle my sage, how to sing when I take the plant. So there's a lot there, rather than like it's a bigger conversation than just can we use it, because I'm Mexican. I'm 50,000 years in Jalisco, Mexico, is how that far back my heritage goes, but I'm white presenting. So I have every white privilege and passage, even though in my heart I'm brown. So in other words, we don't get to just unilaterally say like we're all doing it out of disrespect. I think that like recognizing that our heritage, no matter where it takes us, there's something sacred to every part of it. And white sage right now is very popular, and it has been for a long time, and it's definitely can be overproduced because that's what I heard as well. The same with sandalwood. That's why there's Australian sandalwood now in addition to Indian sandalwood, because we are all going bobo zigzag on the sandalwood, or acacia berries or any of these other things that we decide is a panacea for, whatever it is that we want for cleansing. So yeah, so I definitely believe we can use it, but I do believe that most people don't take those conscious thoughts on how to work with herbs, or how to take herbs and as resources with that consciousness in mind.
So I really hope the watchers and listeners are understanding how this magical and witchy lifestyle is so much about connection and sacredness. I know people tend to focus a lot on the scary factors, like maybe the evil factors that come across at Halloween. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, that negative, that spooky side
Mhm.
is like the gargoyles in front of churches. They're to scare away the evil spirits,
Yes.
right? So this is that time to scare. That's why we dress up as goblins and whatnot, is to scare away the evil spirits, because the veil is so thin that anyone can come through. It's also an opportunity to look at our shadow side, to dress up as the side of ourselves that we don't normally show people. So if really most of the time you're a good girl, but you dress up as a monster every Halloween because you can't wait to let that part of you out.
It's nice to
Yeah, exactly. Or you show up as a glam witch, or maybe this year you're feeling like a black-eyed pea and you show up like fun. There's all these different things that really shows, it gives us an opportunity. There's a day in Mexico, it's called the Day of the Crazy Ones, where you get to just, it's showing how sacred it is to let go of this idea of perfection, to let go of this idea of always got
that's a relief.
done. What's that?
That's a relief to let go.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
perfection.
And that, like, reveling in the silliness, in the coyote, and in the trickster.
I wanted to make sure I got everybody's questions in. We have about 10 minutes, and I noticed Holly was able to join us from the UK in London. So thank you for being here, Holly. You had sent me some questions earlier, which I really appreciate, and I'm going to share those with Jamie now. So her first question is, what is her top tip? What is your top tip for spellcasting?
Intention. When I wrote the teen spell book, one of my spells was get an A in the class. It was about wanting to, like, bring home A's. That was me. I was an A++ student, so it was like,
Same.
absolutely have to. Yes. So by intention, I don't just mean I intend to get an A. I mean, what is your intention behind the intention behind the intention behind the intention? Are you getting an A++ because you don't think you're good enough? Do you need an A+ because you want to get into college? Do you need an A because you're trying to impress others? Do you want an A because it's going to prove something to yourself that you can do it? What is the intention behind the intention? Why do you want that thing you want? And I feel like unpacking however many layers you can until you get to that point where it rings so true that when you do your spell, your chanting is going to ring like those bells that are so clear, like in the morning sky, like the church bells that just cut through the air. And you can feel your intention going out to the universe to be able to collect with all the energy to bring that manifestation to you. So I feel like peeling back the layers so that you know why you're asking for something. And then when you really know it, include that intention either in words or in feeling in your chanting and your spell work. So when you say that, the part of this I make true 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, that you know what you're saying, that you are saying that you want to get those A's because it means that you have really taken in the information and you were present in the moment. And so that's what I want an A for. I want the A to reflect my absolute presence and attention. Bing.
I love that. Oh, that's why I love using bells in my prayer and spell work too. All right. Holly's next question is, what is the most common myth or misconception about magic that she, meaning you, wants to dispel?
About magic?
Yes. What is the most common myth or misconception about magic that you would like to dispel?
I think the most common myth I would say is that there's no payment needed. I feel like for the most part, and this comes from myself, a double Capricorn, born in the year of the lamb. I'm going to move up that hill. I'm going to, I'm firstborn. I'm always about responsibility. So I feel like when we do our spell work, we think often about, okay, what is the altar going to look like? What is my rhyme? What is, these are the things. And the offering is the
I love the
last.
word crafting.
What's that?
I love the word crafting, the crafting
Yes.
of the words. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, thank you. So I have a good wordsmith.
Yes, and I love writing out spells. It's almost like poetry. And then
It is.
the offering.
And the offering, and I feel like people don't often we think it's not the exciting part. You know, the exciting part is getting all the candles, the crystals, and the herbs and the altar together, and then writing the sing-song poem that goes with it, and then standing there. But like, what are we actually truly offering for this spell work, for this magic? You know, and I really feel that reciprocity is an important part that's left out or forgotten or thought of as not as important, so that you can kind of like do a spell a day kind of a thing, you know. And I don't agree with doing a spell a day. I don't agree with, you know, gimme, 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 gimme from the universe. You know, it's like, what is your offering? What will you do? So maybe your offering might be, I will bring water to this altar every day. Maybe this offering is, I will make sure there's fresh flowers, or I will go cleanse my crystals. Like we talked about the other day, I have a bag of crystals I brought to the ocean so I can dip all my crystals in the water.
Yes. And I love simple things like pouring water out from my great grandma's teacup. You know,
Yes.
small intentions that have meaning.
Yes, exactly. And having that moment that the spirits aren't just here to do our bidding. They want that they want the give and take. You know, even the lavender, I believe that when we put a drop of lavender oil, like essential oil, into a diffuser, we often think, oh, I need to, you know, create a calm environment. I'm going to do this, you know. Well, I feel that the lavender calls to us as much as we call to the lavender. The lavender is in its state of calm
Let's
and
do
calls
this.
you and draws you in and entices you in. So for that relationship, maybe one of your offerings is, before you go and collect, this is what I used to do before I would go and collect my herbs for cooking. I would have my kitchen scissors, but I would sage them before I cut my plants. Just having that moment, just a second of recognition for the thing that you're taking. I think that's a really important aspect of magic. I don't know if that's a misconception as much as something that I would just like to see more, because I think the misconception would be that magic's easy. You just, you know, you just snap your fingers, say a couple funny rhymes, and, you know, have out a good couple candles and it'll come together. It's like, no, there's this other element. There's this really important aspect where there's a conversation and a give and take. And that magic is a give and take. It's not just a take.
I love that. Thank you. And the third question, I love this. I'm curious too. What was the first spell you ever cast?
I'm like, oh no, I knew that. I was like, oh, I have to think about it. What? Oh, okay. That was weird. Came out of nowhere. I was like, I don't. Oh yeah. So, my first spell that, or at least the one that's coming to my mind, right? So, but this was a good 20 years ago. So I was in a women's group, and this was before cell phones. So we had a teacher, Linnea Weatherstone. She started Sage Woman magazine. She was the second owner. She was the second owner of Sage Woman magazine. Anyways, so she was our teacher, and what she had us do is stay up over winter solstice. We had to stay up overnight, or as long as we could, to help the sun, like midwife and help mother birth the son. So we stayed up all night with a candle, and you couldn't call or text. You just were there meditating on your candle. And I created a vision board. And my vision board was that I wanted witchcraft and my writings about witchcraft to reach the whole world. And so that has happened.
Yes,
that has happened.
You've sold what? Oh, about 30,000?
Over 30,000 copies.
Wow.
Yeah, all over the world. I've had people from Pakistan emailing or messaging me on Instagram about the book, and all over the world. It's truly been amazing. And sometimes it's the other thing about magic we need to remember is we don't know how long those seeds are gestating for. You know, we often think, oh, if it hasn't happened, it's, whatever, we want it to happen sooner. Sometimes it might be years before a spell manifests.
when it's the right season.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
Oh, so I'm going to take one more question. We'll run over a little bit, but that's all right. I'm really enjoying this conversation and having these wonderful respectful questions from participants. Um, Josiah asks, for people worried about malevolent spirits or living humans, hexes, worried about hexes too, what is your best tip on shielding and personal protection?
Mirrors. I love putting up the mirrors. So, but it's that's one of the first things I do is I put up the visual mirrors, and then I might even put up um and people used to talk about, oh, is that really ethical to put up a mirror when someone's being unkind to you? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm just showing them there's I don't get it. I'm just showing them who they are. Like, of course it's okay. So but I believe in mirrors. And then the other thing is I feel like if you're really feeling like you're being attacked by somebody, that the idea of the one that I was taught was putting yourself in the egg light of light. So there is, and 3 layers. So I believe in, there is the first layer of like a pale, just white light, and then a golden light, and then a light blue light. And there's these eggs that you put yourself in, and then on the outside of that there's mirrors outside of you, outside of that.
Oh, I
So
love
this is something you have to really really work on. I feel like, say, when I was raised Christian Zionist, I was raised with that faith-based religion, that talked about that most things are matter. I'm sorry, that matter that matter is mostly made of thought and idea, and very little of it is matter. And which we know that now. We know now that that things are made up of, mostly space, but we see their form, and
right.
we feel their form. So I was 10 years old when I said to my Sunday school teacher, I said, do you mean to tell me that if I could believe in the space of this table, I could pass my hand through it? She said, yes. And I said, okay. I mean, I'm 10. I'm like, how cool is this? You know what I mean? So I literally, I don't know how I did it, because it's not like I've never done it before, but, or I sense, I saw the emptiness and I passed my hand through a table. So this is the mental magic that is a craft that is developed in this practice and in this lifestyle, is to really see things in that way, to see things. Like I said, I was raised in this Christian Science faith, and one of my favorite lines, I think it's Matthew 17:20 or Matthew 20:17, but it says, oh, this is a religious thing, I'm sorry, I should probably stay out of that. But anyways, I'm like, oh, but it just said, if you have the faith of a grain of mustard seed, you could say to a mountain to move, and nothing will be impossible unto you. Mind over matter. So basically, I believe that it's so important to develop mind over matter as part of your witchcraft practice. And especially when it comes to protection, especially when it comes to feeling like you've been hexed, or that you're being psychically attacked, or that someone's sending you some negative energy, is to really have to focus on that mental magic to see that vision of your protection. And the other thing I think of is, that we all know hate corrodes the vessel that contains it. So the person who's holding that energy is hurting themselves so much more than they can hurt you. And I think really recognizing that, and that if you don't hold on to that hate or that fear, that false evidence appearing real, that was what I was always taught, that fear is an acronym for false evidence appearing real. And so that if you could really hold on to that notion that people are acting from fear, and you're coming from love, and love is that much stronger, always that much stronger than fear.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Holly, and just I both say thank you for the interview and for answering their questions. And on that note of inner confidence and taking care of yourself, even in those in situations where people might be acting negatively toward us. I wanted to remind everyone that there are parts of your book that are meant to help with that confidence and inner wisdom. And I wanted to let people know again that your book will be available to borrow in a week or two here at the Rolla Public Library, and we will get more details from you later about the doing the giveaway. And we're both we submitted items to the anthology Bridget's Light,
Yes,
which
we
is
did.
being edited by Carol Crow and Laura Luella. And we'll have this available at the library too. It comes out in March, and that will be later in the year. So I'm glad that we were able to be a part of that project, and that came to my mind because Bridget is a big part of the wheel of the year, just as Samhain is, going into February and poetry and such. So and let me think, what if I had anything else? Nope, I think that was it. If you have anything you wanted to conclude with?
Oh, I'm just so grateful for the questions and so grateful to feel like I'm still standing,
Yes.
beginning with the Wicca cookbook in 2000 and to still have lasted waiting for the population to get to the point where it's at now, where we believe in this and it's no longer scary, and it's for not for everybody. We're starting to open up and see that we are healers. Witches are healers. We heal and we guide and we help, and nature is our best teacher.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I want to let everyone know that if you have any books on this topic you're interested in and we don't have it available at the library, we'd be glad to request it for you from somewhere else. So, public libraries are a great place for learning about many different lifestyles and traditions, and to hear from authors of those different traditions, such as Jamie. And I hope you'll join us next time for our live event.
So yes, thank you so much for having me. And if anybody has any questions, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram as Jamie Della Writes or jamiedella.com. And I'm happy to answer any more questions or anything else I can offer. This is my service, is to be a teacher and a writer.
And if you do any more writing classes, let me know. If any of you are interested in learning how to write and you really want someone to coach you through your fears that you'll embrace your passion, Jamie's the person for that too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, have a good evening, everyone, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.